You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement. Help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I believe this is episode 236. Today is January 10th, Friday, January 10th, year of our Lord, 2025. And today we have another reaction episode, working out some of the technical kinks and the workflow or the production flow of the reaction show. But we're going to get right into it right now for about an hour and 15 minutes. So strap in and hopefully you enjoy. Just as a preface, tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Real America's Voice. I'm going to talk about some of the issues here, and I think that'll be a consistent theme where even when we do the reaction show or the news show on Wednesdays, I'll probably talk about some of Wednesday's topics on Saturday morning because Friday will usually be a guest episode. We had a switch of schedule this week because AJ Barker was in on Wednesday. If you didn't get a chance, go back to Wednesday's episode at some point and watch the AJ Barker Family Friends edition because he was going off about the state of education and, you know, what's possible, what we could do in education, what he was trying to do in education as a principal, a very young principal at a Catholic elementary school, and I think there was a lot there. So Hebrews is due to come. I think we're pushing it to next week. We apologize that we didn't get to it this week. Make sure that you go watch the Professor Penn podcast. It was aired last night, always Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. at 7:30 p.m. Central. I'm sorry. So make sure that you go and catch those last two episodes. We do plan to do a Hebrews next week. I believe we're going to air Hebrews on Sundays. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to do Hebrews on Sundays, maybe Saturday nights. I'm still not sure yet. I mean, it's just, you know, it's the podcast world. We're mixing and matching. We're figuring things out. I think Saturday is probably the day. I think we're going to do Hebrews on Saturday nights, and we're going to release them on Saturdays. Once a week it's going to be and Saturday nights, and we're going to leave Sunday for the eventual call-in show. So that's the plan. You'll have 7 days worth of 7 days a week worth of content from us here at Free People Radio, as well as eventually a daily show from me on Real America's Voice, and we're all systems go. So Tanner's in the studio with us today. Is your mic on, Tanner? Oh, it's okay. Well, we don't have Tanner's mic on today. We'll get it next week. We're going to start the show. Okay, give me the first video, Tanner. Let's do it. We got Joe Rogan here talking about the Big Bang Theory.
It's interesting to me that there are certain things that we think of in terms of like unexplained phenomena that we'll accept because we have some sort of a scientific definition of what this unexplained phenomena is, like the Big Bang. I mean, and you can say that there's theories. It's not completely unexplained. They kind of get it, but you kind of don't. Something that's smaller than the head of a pin that becomes the entire universe that we say is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and just to say that just happened and you don't really, I know you don't want to say you don't know, but you really don't know. There's no way you can know. It's not really possible to know. There's no like working theory where you can convince me that the whole universe gets compressed into something smaller than the head of a pin and then instantaneously becomes everything that you see.
Well, I think that's why you see natural materialism being woefully inadequate to really explain the ultimate worldview questions that we have.
Just the universe itself, right? Just what we don't know enough. Maybe we one day will. Maybe these, sentient AI systems that we're going to create with quantum computers are going to be able to figure things out in a way that we can't. But at the end of the day, you have one miracle. You have the Big Bang. All of science agrees this happened. That is so much crazier than anything that any religion is proposing, that it's so interesting to me that we say we have echoes of the Big Bang. There's, radio echoes. Yeah, but also, if a miracle did take place, like, let's assume that there is actually a higher power that occasionally interacts with human beings. And if a miracle did take place and you were there, you don't have a camera, you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a pen, you can't write things down, maybe you can't even read. And you have this thing that happens to you, and this thing changes the course of human history. This thing changes the direction, the ideology that these people subscribe to, and the moral and ethical structure that they live their life by. It changes untold billions of human beings from that point on.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
That in itself, even if this is just a revelation without a divine interaction, that's a fucking miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that it was created at all. Like, the whole idea that Christianity, when you're saying that the book of, was it the book of Isaiah?
Yeah.
That the same book is exactly the same as, like, that's a miracle. That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
If you just imagine the sheer number of illiterate people, the sheer number of days that have to go by where people are telling the story exactly the same, and that it's entrusted in the hands of these very few people that are so dedicated to it that they get the exact words right 1,000 years later. Pretty bananas.
Yeah, Joe Rogan asking some very important questions, and I think it's timely because of the discussion that A.J. Barker and I had, Professor Penn and I continue to have on the Hebrews episodes. This question of science, modern science, and what we have come to accept as the mainstream consensus on scientific questions, or questions, existential questions, human questions, even down to the Big Bang itself, which has become sort of the could say central theory to all other scientific information. At least in some part, especially when we talk about space and physics and things of that nature, gravity, relativity, which are questions that are becoming more and more popular and more important, mostly as we try and pursue or advance technological warfare, right? I mean, a lot of these, space and hypersonic and, anti-gravity. And so a lot of these scientific questions are becoming even more popular and even more consequential, not to even get to extraterrestrial and are we going to become an interplanetary species, interstellar species, intergalactic species, so on and so forth. But, he posed a very good point that I think up until now, where a podcast world even exists and a Joe Rogan can have a platform as big as he's created, it wasn't even safe to question these things. And that's always dangerous. And that's what AJ was talking about the other day in terms of education writ large, is when you can't question things, just kind of on a fundamental basis, you end up with inadequate information. But even more importantly, you end up teaching people based on inadequate information, and eventually entire eras of time are captured by lies, or let's say at least falsehoods. I mean, whatever you want to call it. But the Big Bang theory is widely accepted in the scientific community. And even if there was what we conceive of as a Big Bang, it doesn't. There's Siri. Siri wants to talk. As soon as you talk Big Bang, Siri wants to chime in. But even if we say that conceptually a Big Bang was possible, it obviously doesn't discredit God. In fact, in most sane and rational people's mind who aren't completely turned off, let's say, by the idea of a higher power or God, I think the Big Bang theory actually helps the theory of God. because it's just the timing, the randomness of it, the precision of it, why didn't a Big Bang, for example, in the void of infinity, why didn't it just rip space itself into shreds if there was that much force? I mean, there's so many questions that almost give evidence that God is real. It's almost laughable that people don't believe in God, in my opinion. But then again, I'm a Christian, so obviously my opinion would be biased to some out there. But Joe Rogan's not a Christian, I don't believe. He may be on his way to conversion, and all accounts that I've listened to him talk about God or religion or faith, or he's pretty much been firmly, what would you say, an atheist, if not like a pragmatic agnostic or something like that. I don't know. But, he's not a Bible thumper. He's not a right wing Christian, evangelical or anything like that. And he's just asking a basic question on a scientific level. Like, now when I'm thinking about accepted mainstream narratives, which he has fought against, I don't even know that the Big Bang squares. And it's just like, that's where we're coming to. It's just not Donald Trump winning the election. This is about institutional status quo and narrative and capture in some cases, and people just finally waking up and going, you know what, these accepted consensus, they don't square anymore. They don't check out, and it was cool to see that, because really Joe Rogan is giving a little bit of credit back to religion and the Christian tradition and our stories about creation, which I think have just as much merit, if not more, than the Big Bang. So we're moving in the right direction. Shout out to Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan podcast. Hopefully one day I can make it on there. I don't agree with Joe on this idea that artificial intelligence or quantum chip computers are going to solve that issue. Like AJ Barker and I talked about on Wednesday, four heresies of the West. AJ calls them the four false idols of the West: the scientific method, which we're talking about here with the Big Bang Theory, and then democracy, computer technology, and the last and final will probably be artificial intelligence. I don't think any of those bridge the gap between man and God. And I think we play with fire, and forces that we really can't control when we pursue those things. One of the good examples would be nuclear weapons. I mean, we played with the idea of being able to, kind of uh, tip the scales of creation and destruction by splitting the atom and building that into, or weaponizing that. And we're on the brink of world war right now, and nuclear war, and that obviously would be bad for a lot of people. Planet will still be here. I do want to say that the planet has faced far worse things than nuclear warheads throughout its lifespan, but people will have a tough time. So that's kind of the paradox we face. Let me get the next one, Tanner. Now, this is interesting. This Jimmy Carter funeral was interesting. This is a who's who of political juggernauts, and they sit them all right next to each other on purpose, it almost feels like. Okay, so was that the full clip? Okay, there's another clip in here, a longer clip, I think, where they show all of the. Well, I think. Well, first off, what makes that clip funny is them sitting Barack Obama right next to Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know who was in charge of the seating arrangement, or is it Jimmy Carter's family or the Jimmy Carter estate or funeral plan? I don't know who. When you become a president and you have presidential funeral services, I'm sorry, I'm just not deep enough inside of DC politics to know how that all works. But it's got to be some type of sick joke that they sat Trump right next to, I mean, literally the chair next to Barack Obama. Or maybe it's one of those kind of superficial kumbaya moments, right? Where it's supposed to, well, Obama's kind of one era of politics, and Donald Trump is the current era of politics, and we can maybe have some unity or cordial, you know, cordialness between the two. So maybe it was that. But anyway, I mean, it's anytime you get Donald Trump and Barack Obama sitting next to each other, it's just a crazy sight. Uh, what's funny is Kamala Harris there's another angle, if you can find it on the internet, there's another angle where Kamala Harris, it's from a lower vantage, and it's kind of like a couple rows in front. And you can see Kamala Harris kind of, turn and look back. And right at that moment, Barack Obama and Donald Trump seem to be sharing what is, some small talk back and forth, but they seem to be sharing a bit of a laugh or something that seems rather friendly, given all of the political tension between the two factions. And Kamala Harris, you can just see on her face, she is not happy. She is not liking the sight of seeing Barack Obama and Donald Trump share a common casual laugh together. And there's another clip where it's much longer, and they show all of these people entering. And again, I mean, they all sort of entered at the same time. The clip, if we have, is within 2 minutes. They all enter at the same time. It's like Donald Trump first, then it's Barack, then it's Kamala, then it's the Bushes, then it's George Bush and his wife, and then it's Hillary and Bill. And the clip just shows the dynamics of, these people didn't talk to these people didn't shake these people's hand. And, it just, at the end of the day, Donald Trump is obviously the outlier of the group, and he's sort of snatched power as to where all of the rest of them, and, it's Barack Obama, it's Bush, it's the Clintons, and even they tried to, sneak Kamala Harris in there. I mean, these people are all as establishment as it gets, and, they kind of have to deal with Donald Trump, and they're all aware of the optics, if they're overtly rude or, what they say, rebuff or, are scoff at Donald Trump in public, everybody's watching. It's going to make headlines. These people are masters in political public relations. So, it was just interesting. But again, Trump, Barack, Bill, and Hillary and George all sitting right next to each other. And obviously, the last four presidential families, Joe Biden wasn't there so far as I saw in the clip that I saw. But just interesting how the dynamics work. It's hard to make out what's really going on. You can't take much from it, but it is interesting and entertaining to watch. And George Bush did not shake Donald Trump's hand, which shouldn't surprise us. I mean, if there's real political tension in America, it's between the George Bush faction of the Republican Party and the Donald Trump or MAGA wing. So is this the clip here? Okay, we're going to play it for you right now. This is the full clip of Donald Trump coming in, sitting down, and the other presidential families as well. Let's play it, Tanner. Okay, so we got Donald Trump. He stands. There's Al Gore and Mike Pence, Judas Pence, and Donald Trump's kind enough to shake Mike Pence's hand in victory. He's graceful in his victory. I wouldn't have shook Mike Pence's hand, but the president is a much nicer and kinder man than I am. And Melania, she's stunning and gorgeous and classy as ever, and she shook Mike Pence's hand as well. I don't know if I would have shaken Al Gore's hand, to be quite honest. I mean, I think that guy's a spinster as well. Donald Trump graceful at Jimmy Carter's funeral here. We got all these political people. They're probably okay. And now see, here comes Barack Obama, and he's sitting right next to Donald Trump. I mean, you got Judas Pence shaking Barack's hand. And you got Al Gore shaking Barack's hand. Yeah. Okay. Barack still pretty fit. He's still a political superstar. And he's sitting in the chair directly next to Donald Trump. And you see, he didn't shake Donald Trump's hand. But I mean, how are you going to get away from talking to the guy? You're sitting right next to him at a funeral. And why didn't he shake his hand? I mean, the subtle nonverbals in these videos. Okay, well now they're talking, so you didn't shake his hand, but you can talk to him. I don't know what that means. Maybe the handshake ain't a big deal, but it was surely a big deal to shake Mike Pence's hand. Okay, so he stands up to let Bush in. It's tight corner there. Bush gives him the old, good old boys tap on the stomach. Okay, and, Mrs. Bush here, she's doing the handshake, and George is kind of giving the over-the-shoulder. You people are grundoons to me, okay? Daddy Bush was the real power. Daddy Bush was the real juice. The CIA is still the real juice. Really, the most powerful guy here is probably Little George, to be honest. I mean, you got to understand, Barack Obama, knowingly or unknowingly, I believe knowingly, was working for the security state or has been working for the security state the whole time, the establishment that Bush is in charge of. Okay, here comes Hillary and Bill, and they all stand up. And Hillary goes to handshaking. And there's Bill. Bill's giving the old handshake. And if you notice here, Barack Obama and Donald Trump are still talking. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I just wish I could be a fly on the audio of whatever Barack and Donald Trump are talking about right here would be so viral. You agree, Tanner? I mean, there would be billions of views on just this minute of them talking. I don't know what they're talking about here. And I think next is coming Kamala Harris and Dougie. Okay, it's not in there. Well, anyway, Kamala Harris and Doug come next, I believe, and that's where you can see Kamala Harris very uncomfortable, or at least she looked uncomfortable with Barack Obama and Donald Trump talking. In the clip that I saw on Instagram, because, people like to speculate and theorize, and the clip said, when you realize that they were in on it together the whole time. And I think what they were trying to say in the clip was that there's a boys club. This is what the clip was trying to say, I believe. That there's a boys club and that they would have never let Kamala Harris run the country no matter what. That's what the clip tried to suggest. I don't believe that. I believe that every other person there besides Donald Trump and Melania, including Mike Pence and Al Gore, are all working for the same establishment, and they try to put Kamala Harris in as best as they could. Now, was there some backbiting and undermining along the way? Obviously, because there is no honor amongst thieves. But when push comes to shove, the two opposing factions of American politics are those two men sit next to each other, Barack Obama and Donald Trump, and even more importantly, little George Bush Jr., sitting there in the middle, who is the living titular head of George Bush Sr.'s legacy as the, let's say, the real juice of the United States intelligence community. And Bill and Hillary, who worked their way high up that ladder, and who knows how much dirt, blackmail material they got on the rest of everybody, because they made a long walk themselves from being a couple of grundoons to being very, very powerful on the world stage. So just an interesting moment there at a funeral, Jimmy Carter's funeral, and you get to see the power, so to speak, power players come together and watch them interact. I'll take the next one, Tanner. Okay. This was an interesting clip for sure.
On this Harris business, I think before we canonize St. Kamala here on the high holy day of January 6th, let's remember the Electoral Count Reform Act of 2022 makes it perfectly clear that the vice president has nothing but purely ministerial duties on this day. She didn't actually certify the results of the election. That's done by the voters and the people of the state.
It was clear as day 4 years ago as well, right. but because of the
that's the thing. I mean, nobody's trying to canonize her. The same thing was true for
they're not. I mean, she put out a video trying to canonize herself.
She was actually just saying it's unremarkable. That's true.
That's the opposite of canonizing. I want to actually congratulate the Democrats today. This is the first election since 1980.
He's doing this again.
This is the first election since 1988
Scott,
that a Republican
come on,
won, and
Scott.
Democrats did not try to overturn the results on the floor of the Congress. So congratulations, Democrats.
I'm only interrupting you because we've heard this before.
We've
played this.
Well, you've heard the truth before, but I thought it was worth repeating.
Hey, Scott throwing down, talk about a man being in the belly of the beast. I like this guy. I mean, he's in there. He's in the lion's den, and obviously, it's at some level, CNN and all of this political news pundit, commentary is a business, and it's supposed to be entertaining, and it is entertaining. Obviously, we're covering it, and people watch it. It's got an audience, a shrinking audience, but it's got an audience. You're going to see CNN's ratings go back up because now they get to use Donald Trump as gasoline to fuel all the Donald Trump haters. You got to take stuff with a grain of salt, but this guy is in the belly. I mean, this is the lion's den right here on CNN, and he just threw out a very casual fact that over the course of a good number of elections where a Republican won, the Democrats have tried to overturn the result on the floor of the Congress, and this is the first time that they haven't done that in a long time. And you see this CNN panel here wants no part of that reality. And this is, again, I mean, they're still making mistakes. Even this is a grand indictment of their dishonesty. I mean, just go back and watch. Play it again for them, Tanner. I mean, just watch how uncomfortable they are with Scott saying this. I mean, and why? And this guy's a rat. I mean, I can't even,
On this Harris business,
Kissinger,
I think before we
rat.
canonize St. Kamala here on the high holy day of January 6th,
With
let's
his
remember
blue
the
tie.
Electoral Count
He's
Reform
a
Act of
rat.
2022
Scumbag.
makes it perfectly clear that the vice president has nothing but purely ministerial duties on this day. She didn't actually certify the results of the election. That's done by the voters and the people of the
It was
state.
clear as day 4 years ago as well, but because of the
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, nobody's trying to canonize her. The same thing was true for
they're
years
not.
ago.
I mean, she put out a video
no,
trying
they
to
are.
canonize herself.
She was actually just saying it's unremarkable. That's true.
That's the opposite of
issue.
canonizing.
I want to actually congratulate the Democrats today. This is the first election since 1980.
Look at Van.
This is the first
Look at Van
election
Jones.
since 1988.
Wait, what color is that jacket? Is
that a
that
Republican won,
chartreuse?
and
What this guy
Democrats
got
did
up?
not try
You
to
should-
overturn the results on the floor of the Congress. So congratulations,
I'm
Democrats.
only interrupting you because we've heard this before.
I'm only interrupting you
We've heard
because
this
it
before, but I thought
debunks.
was
Pause
worth
it. Pause it. I'm only interrupting you because it debunks the narrative that only Republicans and MAGA America First Donald Trump supporters are election deniers. That's why I'm interrupting you. And that's why she was interrupting him. And just as a general principle, I don't like her. I don't like Van Jones. Of all of them, Adam Kinzinger, that's his name, right? Kinzinger, I think it is. He's the biggest rat on the panel for sure. Mr. Never Trump a Republican. And he's sitting there with this blue tie. Well, I don't know what is that. That's the tie of moderates. That's the color of uniparty. Bipartisanship. I mean, what a little fruitcake. Okay, give me the next clip. I mean, Democrats, they still don't want to admit facts, and they're going to keep losing as long as that's the way that they choose to operate. So CNN doing more work for MAGA than we could have ever dreamed of, than we could ever paid for. Okay, now this is good. Wait, before you play this is gold here. This is the shift of America. And I'm not saying I'm the biggest John Fetterman fan. I think Fetterman's arrival on the political scene was odd. It was strange. It was conspicuous. He got sick, and then he was, a whole bunch of things went down with Fetterman that were weird, to say the least. But I will say, number one, you have a politician who, like myself, I mean, I never show up in a hoodie for the most part, but, Fetterman has kind of a persona going where he's showing up in the hoodie, he's rejecting this facade, this theater of the power suit and the power tie. And I just, on face value, even if it's disingenuous and kind of manufactured, even because it could be. I mean, you could have somebody out there who's a political kingmaker who's going, you know what, Pennsylvania, Fetterman, he's got a future, but here's how we're going to approach his public persona. That could be happening. But I kind of think part of it is this is who Fetterman really is. I kind of believe it. And I could be wrong. And you always say this stuff like kind of, kind of apprehensively because, you could turn around and 3 years later you find out the guy's a complete fraud and the whole thing was cooked up and now you're sitting on camera and they bring up these clips like, oh, you were fooled by the Fetterman facade. But, the point is he's showing up in a more streetwear kind of, non-assuming, non-politically tied lobby, special interest, puppet politician way. And right here, he just fully departs from the Democrat narrative completely. And you're going to see people do this. And the reason I'm saying this up front is me and Professor Pennant have been talking about, but you're going to see now them trying to coalesce the new uniparty or the new corrupt center with a MAGA banner, with a MAGA flag. And here is the start of it. John Fetterman's at the head of that shift, whether knowingly or unknowingly. What he's doing here is saying all my other Democrat colleagues have lost their minds. The real issue is that they don't want to even say the word illegal immigrant. And why wouldn't we be able to purchase Greenland? There was a Louisiana purchase. There's been other big purchases in the past, like Alaska. Why couldn't America, shop to purchase Greenland or whatever else that we want? I mean, it's not, crazy for us to try and acquire new land. And right here, he just goes off. Go ahead, play the clip, Tanner.
There's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. Now, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Well, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly, and now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out, but some things might work out, some may not, but that's part of ongoing dialogue. But he hasn't even taken office in 2 weeks. And, we really need to pace ourselves if we're going to freak out over every last tweet or every last conversation or press conference. but
good advice, John.
That's a good one, John. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, we are here to work together.
Yeah.
And some things we can agree or disagree. But I think that's how DC works.
Yeah, I think we had another video of Fetterman throwing down on the Democrats about the Lake and Riley Act, which, by the way, just that was put up at the House this past week. And out of all the senators, there were 9 that didn't vote yes for the Lake and Riley Act, which basically establishes some rational thought and expectations and approach thinking policy around the situation at the border. And only 9 U.S. senators didn't vote yes. Tina Smith was one of the 9. Up for re-election in 2026. Will be my opponent here in the next 24 months. And, I mean, I for all my Minnesotans out there watching or anybody else who understands that United States senator races are all nationalized races because no U.S. senator is only representing the constituents of their respective state. You have to take votes on all of these national policies, all national policies, in fact. I don't know why anybody's under the illusion that every U.S. senator race isn't a national race. But Tina Smith, for some reason, is so confident in her seat that she's dumb enough to vote against one of the more rational illegal immigration bills that even many of our other Democrat colleagues are in favor of or voted to pass. So this is, John Fetterman's trying to go out front here and be the leader to sort of stabilize what is going to become more Trump derangement syndrome from the Democrat Party or from the left side of the aisle. He's trying to be a stabilizing force, and fair play to him. He made some very good points about Greenland, about the purchase of new land or acquisition of new land. The Louisiana purchase obviously worked out well for America, and Alaska worked out well for America as well. We'll see what happens in the future. I was one of the people saying a year and a half ago, annex this, annex that. People were going, oh, this, U.S. Senate candidate is talking about annexing all of these places and blah, blah, blah. Well, here we are. And, hey, I still have never spoken to President Trump. Never once have I had a conversation with President Trump. Somewhere in here, our wires are crossing the same, are crossing in a good way, in a positive way, with a positive spark. So we'll see what happens. Do I think Greenland would be a good purchase? I'm not quite sure. I mean, honestly, it's out there. It's out there. Now, is there a lot of rich resources out there for us? Yeah. Could it be a good staging site for us militarily? Yeah. We want to get away from being a global military empire, but as long as we don't have some huge ongoing fight to, let's say, occupy or defend Greenland, which would now be new borders for us to defend, potentially, I'm all for it. I mean, everybody else seems to be expanding. The question is, how much is it going to cost us? And that's the question Americans should be interested in. What is going to be the actual cost for us to acquire it and for us to keep it and protect it? If it's going to be another, $10 trillion in debt, then we can't do it. But if Greenland's purchase offers us some resources that we could use as revenue to offset the cost of the purchase and the debt that we already have, then any sane and rational person or leader would at least look into that as an option. So we'll see what happens with Greenland. My guess is that we don't end up purchasing it, but if we do, dawn of a new era. The America, like Donald Trump said, and I think we got a clip of Donald Trump saying it, this is the dawn of the golden age of America. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Next clip.
And I said, what are you doing running? And you're saying it was really good out?
It's the perfect texture for running. Very low impact and it's dry snow so your feet don't get wet.
Stay warm. All right, thanks. We've seen a lot of people out here, like you said, running, sledding, just enjoying it. One thing, oops.
There she goes. Yeah, oops.
That can happen,
That can
unfortunately.
happen,
Looks like Chelsea's okay. You okay?
We hope so.
Yes, okay.
Not so sure that she's okay. Hopefully that this is a clip that's really, famous and been all over the internet. Have you seen it before, Tanner? Yeah. It's I threw this in there because we just got some unexpected snowfall here in the last couple of days in Minnesota. And this just shows you how goofy the news can be, right? I mean, it's so goofy. It's funny to me. Here's what's funny to me. This is why I chose the clip. You can't talk about ivermectin. You can't say we should be hesitant about vaccines. You can't say that maybe the way we're approaching the Ukraine-Russia conflict isn't the best for everybody involved, including the Ukrainians there on the front line. You can't say that illegal immigrants are illegal and that some of them are violent criminals that we definitely shouldn't let into the country, are a danger to our citizens, especially the women and children who are often more defenseless than the men. You can't even say that sometimes women and children are more defenseless than men, but you can openly advocate that people go running in the snow. I mean, it's ridiculous. In what world, are we, and even, people can run in the snow. I'm not saying that they can. Obviously, she took an unfortunate spill and, hitting your head and your back on the pavement like that. Tanner, you're dealing with now going snowboarding, dealing with that tailbone. I mean, back problems you can really get hurt out there is what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that people don't go running or shouldn't go running, but it's just the way with which the media is so sure when they want to promote something, when they want to say something's okay. And this is just instant karma for this news broadcast. Oh, yeah, we're out here with some, local joggers who are enjoying this nice winter snow. It's fluffy and soft, and it's great to run on. And here she goes 5 steps before she eats the pavement. And, just in good old mainstream media establishment fashion, oops, it's like play the clip again. Oops, that's just, that's not an oops. You people are stupid. That's the problem. I mean, in our society, for most part, this is a microcosm of how the mainstream media is slowly destroying the fabric of our entire society. This is a great example. Play the clip again.
And I said, what are you doing running? And you're saying it was really good out?
It's the perfect texture for running. Very low impact on its dry
Stop
snow.
her.
So
See,
your
you got to
feet don't
stop
get
it
wet.
right here. They should have stopped her, right? A responsible reporter would have said, oh, wait a second. We can't, as a news organization, we cannot confirm or affirm or say with any confidence that running during a blizzard is safe. Not only is it you running and slipping and, busting your shit, but what about other cars that are driving that are going to have trouble braking, right? And sliding through intersections and spinning out. I mean, you'd be surprised how quick a car will spin out at 30 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour and wipe you out at 40 miles an hour. You're dead, right? I mean, you're sustaining some long-term injuries if a car spins out and hits you as a jogger. And how often do joggers get hit anyway? I mean, there's so much here that's just kind of assumed that this is okay. And it doesn't take into account at all what the facts are about the dangers of pedestrians, especially in a blizzard at nighttime. And they got the reflective, posh, what I would assume to be liberal running gear on. But I'm just not buying it. Keep playing the clip.
All right, thanks. We've seen a lot of people out here, like you said, running, sledding, just enjoying it. One thing,
Yeah,
oops.
she's not enjoying it.
That can happen,
The joy just stopped
unfortunately.
for her.
Looks like Chelsea's okay.
Chelsea,
You okay?
Chelsea's not okay.
Yes, okay.
Chelsea needs some assistance. But instant karma there for the mainstream media who's arrogant as the day is long. Let me get the next clip, Tanner. Okay, here we go.
Madam Vice President, I know you're directly affected, so you fire away. No pun intended.
All right, as the president throws it to the vice president.
I mean, the gift that just keeps on giving, and this isn't even funny, okay? What's going on out there in LA, in California, is a great tragedy. We probably should even have played this clip right after the snow one, because this is not a joking matter, but we're not doing them in order. Next time we'll make sure that we got the order more succinct. But this is the president of the United States. Joe Biden is still the president of the United States for another several days or whatever the case may be. And this fire that's taking place right now in LA is probably one of the more destructive and tragic wildfires that's taking place in California, at least in the residential area. And I think we got a clip on here from Rogan talking about, there was a prediction that happened on Rogan's podcast earlier where a firefighter told him if the right fire and wind catches, it's going to burn straight through LA all the way to the ocean. But here we have the president of the United States making a joke about it. I mean, he tells Kamala Harris at this cabinet, cabinet press conference or whatever it was they were doing here. This is in the last day or so. And he tells Kamala Harris, fire away, no pun intended. I mean, this is a man who has lost touch with the seriousness of the job, what's going on in this country, and the sort of leadership that should be exhibited, the consideration that should be exhibited as the president of the United States. And yet they'll say that Donald Trump is the worst thing to ever happen to this country. I mean, this fire, when the damage is finally tallied up, and I already saw one young woman was in the neighborhood of her 83-year-old grandfather who they found in his home, burned down, dead. I mean, this thing is tragic, and it's not even remotely appropriate to make a joke or infer a joke about what's happening there in California. Fire away, no pun intended. And what it also does, it also fuels conspiracy theories, because when you're the president of the United States, when you're somebody who is charged with the safety and security and the overall or general well-being of American citizens, and you make some casual off-the-cuff comment like that during tragic times, people start to go, well, maybe the government knows. Maybe the government's in on it. Maybe the government has a hand in it, which could, in fact, be the case. I don't know. I mean, certainly not saying it in a conspiratorial way that there's always benefit when fires sweep through and take out people's property, and it offers people, other people, to come and buy property for pennies on the dollar. We saw that in Lahaina in the Maui fire, which still there's a lot of controversy and questions about. But the next level of it is the DEI. Hiring people at the fire departments, or even the mayors, or even just electing people in general to positions of power in our society and government that aren't on merit, have consequences. And usually when you face natural or man-made disasters, which they're facing now. So, bad timing by Sleepy Joe. It's to come to be expected. But again, every Democrat, and the real reason why I played this clip is every Democrat that lied and said that Joe Biden was fit for office, this is yet another example in the final days of his presidency of how dishonest you people actually are. And it was Governor Tim Walz, and it was Amy Klobuchar, and it was Tina Smith, and it was a whole host of other Democrats from across the country, including Kamala Harris, that came to you before the American people and said, this man is competent, this man is healthy enough to not only continue to be the president, but to be president for another 4 years. I mean, they were trying to sell you that this guy was competent enough and had enough cognitive ability left to be president of the United States for another 4 years. Never forget that. Never forget, this is the outtake of the illegitimate regime under Joe Biden and the Democrats who helped him do it. Let's take the next clip. Here we got Donald Trump talking about the situation there in California. Here we go. Play the clip.
They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why don't you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north. Water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. I could have water for all of that land. Water for your forests. Your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay?
Dangerous.
That water could be routed. You could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. And all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
we'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
And get rid of the trees that have fallen that are like.
Donald Trump, way ahead of his time, and I'm not that far ahead of his time. Obviously, Donald Trump's only been on the Joe Rogan podcast one time, and it was, right before the election. But in terms of the destruction that we're seeing right now in LA and California and the consequences, way ahead of this latest catastrophe and wildfire. And when we say make America great again, you guys can, anybody out there can again, make it seem like it's all about race or xenophobia or whatever else, white supremacy. Fine. If that's how you want to play it, obviously you're an American citizen. You have the right, you're entitled to your opinion. But what about making America great in terms of the wildlife? What about making America great in terms of our national forest and our federal land that these EPA, the Environmental Protection Agencies and a bunch of other agencies have basically neglected for some strange political narrative where we actually put the very land that we say we want to protect in more danger by not doing things that we could actually do. So in some cases, we want to do AI. We want to do artificial intelligence. We want to do advanced, industrial revolution because all science is a net positive for the human species and it's going to make everybody's life better. But we don't want to do simple things like rake the forest of dead leaves and trees. I mean, this is another great example where the condition or state of our union of America and of human society is not a coincidence. I mean, either these people are radically stupid or they are diabolical because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, tell me how you can justify not getting the dead wood and the dead trees out of our force when it's possible. I mean, there's jobs to be created there. There's a useful way to spend government money, to hire people to do these, to do these things. And Donald Trump's here just saying, hey, we wanted to unleash the water so that there could be water that flows through this entire area. And he faced opposition. And I guarantee you, we'll see, mark my words, get your notepad out, keep track. When he goes to make America great again after he gets in office and these very reasonable, sane, logical, and in some ways easy things to do, when he goes to do it again, he's going to face opposition again. And watch the people who oppose him and take the names and just ask yourself, what is the justification? Did we not just watch a fire burn through LA? I mean, what is you guys' plan? Okay. Obviously to let the place burn. Which you could say is like, that was by chance. Like, it's unfortunate. This is a big, but you could be so stupid and so arrogant and so negligent. You could be so naive that the consequences are the same as if you were a diabolical genocidal maniac. That's the reality. That is a reality of the human condition. You could be so stupid that the result is the exact same as if you were a maniacal serial killer. And that's part of the human existence that we don't really want to have to deal with, because it puts an onus on people to be somewhat aware of the choices they make at a sort of hyper level, right? It really places responsibility on each individual to not only develop the intellect, like we were talking about with AJ, to raise children and people with a developed intellect, but to sort of safeguard that intellect from corruption. It just raises the responsibility up. And, when you just kind of abnegate that and go, it's going to be what it's going to be. Life is life. Oh, life be life. And all these stupid fucking, slogans and fucking, memes that people live by now. Some jerk off fucking college kids writing in his dorm room under his, roommate's bunk bed, whatever the case may be, on his MacBook. Okay. But then people die in fires, right? Because we didn't take citizenship serious enough to hold our elected officials accountable to actually do anything that actually helps society and communities, versus just saying, we hired the first transgender fire chief. Hooray. And it's okay. Well, people die. I mean, those type of stupid decisions and thought processes have consequences. So give me the next clip. More example of contradiction. We got Barack Obama in 2014. Watch as Barack Obama talks about immigration. Here we go.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half century.
Yeah. I mean, he just said the quiet part out loud. Not only is he a hypocrite when it comes to illegal immigration, not only is the mainstream media a bunch of hypocrites when it comes to illegal immigration, the entire Democrat apparatus are hypocrites when it comes to illegal immigration. And it's always a gem to find one of these clips from yesteryear where these politicians had a completely different position. And I'm not saying your position can't change. Obviously, Barack Obama's been on the record saying that his thought process on immigration changed conveniently as it became advantageous for his own political power to change his position on illegal immigration. But he certainly ran on an anti-illegal immigration platform back in 2008. That clip is even more stark than this one. Sounds very MAGA and America First. Maybe that's why him and good old Donald Trump can share some casual, common conversation and a couple laughs, because Barack Obama's captured. I mean, he has an entire political empire built on the position that he's taken, right? And part of his existence now, which is a heavy burden to bear, is to try and preserve that position. I mean, he's one guy. He's one of the most famous and powerful people on the entire planet in the history of human civilization. That's a lot of weight. Whether you agree with him or not, you got to acknowledge that's a lot of weight. And some people don't have the fortitude to, come clean and just bear the truth, in a position like that. But deep down, he knows it's true. I mean, he knows what he said. He remembers. And the other thing about Barack Obama is you're talking about a guy who's highly educated. Okay, he's no dummy. This guy knows exactly what he's talking about. And the policies that they passed, he knew exactly what the consequences were going to be. This guy is not a dummy. He's very, very intelligent, very highly educated. Not to say that everybody who's highly educated is intelligent, because that's not true. But this guy knows the nuts and bolts of policy. And he and whoever else were in on this illegal immigration invasion are on the on deck circle to have real justice brought upon them for its implications for our country and our countrymen and women. So another interesting moment where politicians just completely change where they are on a thing because of Donald Trump, I guess. I mean, they'll blame it all on Trump until the day Trump dies, and then it'll be whoever's left, me, Barron. I mean, it'll be whoever's there that's MAGA at the time or who says we should have a country with borders will be the new biggest villain. So I'll take the next one, Tanner. Give me the next clip.
Common. Yeah, I don't drink. I just stopped drinking. I used to drink, and I wasn't an alcoholic. Like, whenever you tell people you don't drink, yeah, they always want an explanation. They always want to know what happened. Was it a problem? Was you beating your kids? Did you ruin marriages? Did you kill somebody in the vehicle? Like, what happened? We can't believe you don't drink poison. Explain to us why you don't drink poison. I don't get the shock. Like, if I was to tell somebody, man, I don't never drink water, they'd be like, oh, okay.
That's classic. That's true in a funny way. I know a little bit more lighthearted and humorous, but it is true nonetheless. And we do have a wild alcohol culture in this country, don't we? And in society. And it I guess to tie into what we've been talking about here is just a microcosm of how crazy the norms are that we've built for ourselves as a culture and what we accept from one another. It is just like a foregone conclusion that grown adults should drink alcohol or get fucking wasted. And I'm not going to say that I don't drink alcohol or that I haven't drunk alcohol. Historically speaking, I'm a very drug or alcohol person. I've been fortunate that way. I was fortunate that God, shocked my entire circuit board and made it so my earliest days with panic attacks at 16 years old kind of gave which already I didn't grow up around people who did drugs and alcohol. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, it's a miracle in the neighborhood that I grew up in, where people were selling drugs, people were doing drugs. It's a miracle that just my small ecosystem didn't really have drugs in it. And the biggest part of that was my mom, who was a single mother, you spend the most of your time at home, I guess, in your own home. She didn't do any drugs or alcohol. So I guess at my house, not only that, she didn't really deal with people. We didn't have people coming in and out of my house that did drugs or alcohol. So that was the first kind of line of defense. But even just in the happenstance of the immediate community that I was growing up in, there were drugs and alcohol there, but it was never really in my face. Another testament to my mother and my immediate community, my sort of extended family, on the way that they brought us up, the way they raised those people, us young people. So I had the good fortune to not have a predisposition for alcohol and drugs. It didn't seem like a normal thing to me. It seemed like a dangerous thing at a young age. And then I made the mistake of, succumbing to peer pressure, which many of us do in our teenage years. Smoked marijuana for the first time, had a massive panic attack, would have massive panic attacks for many months to come until I was diagnosed with general anxiety, got on medication. Many of you know the story. But, I was lucky, and I've been lucky to not have drugs and alcohol be a big part of my life, but it is a big part of people's lives. I mean, a huge part of people's lives. And here you got a guy who's, basically calling it out saying, man, I tell people all the time, I don't drink poison. It's actually poison. And it is. I mean, if you ever see, they show these pictures of people who have cirrhosis of the liver. If you ever see a liver that has cirrhosis or a liver that goes bad and that yellow jaundice that people get in their eyes when their liver goes bad, I mean, people's liver goes bad, you're checking into the upper room. I mean, there ain't no liver transplants, no widespread liver. It's a bad disease. Alcoholism is a bad disease. And don't get me wrong, an occasional drink, within reason, wine. Even Jesus Christ drank wine. One of the miracles of the Bible was, the wine stopped flowing. I'm going to turn water into wine. It's one of the all-time party tricks in human history, right? So all things in moderation. But I love when Rory McIlroy. It's crazy to go talking about Jesus Christ to Rory McIlroy in general. That's just wild. But there was about 6 years back, and they asked Rory McIlroy on the PGA Tour about the fans, because I guess the fans had become, an issue. They had become, a topic of conversation nonetheless. And Rory McIlroy just goes, man, dude, I just think these fans are getting way too drunk out here. It's like, yeah, they are. As an athlete, I know a huge piece of sports is alcohol and people getting drunk. And I think just in life in general, people are getting way too drunk and they're doing way too many drugs. And we're starting to create a culture where we're normalizing that even more than ever before. It used to be, at least when we were coming up, I'm older than Tanner, but when we were coming up, the DARE program was a staunch sort of stalwart of the American school system. And it was like, look, you don't do drugs or alcohol, right? It was like, don't do drugs or alcohol, don't have sex. If you do drugs or alcohol, you will be in a drunken car accident. You have sex, you will get HIV. Even though that's not true. I mean, but the scare tactic was there, at least culturally. I kind of feel like that's slowly disappeared. And some of it has to do with the institutions corruptly creating, you could say, a loophole for big pharma to push drugs legally that are just as detrimental as street drugs. And there's an argument to be made for that. Many people who are part of the marijuana movement, the legalized marijuana movement, will say Pfizer and their products are just as, if not more dangerous than the marijuana you would get on the street. And in many cases, that's true, including some, ouchies, some Fauci ouchies. But, but at the same time, marijuana has its dangers as well. We can't overlook that. And certainly alcohol. Alcohol is so dangerous, I don't even think people understand. Alcohol is the one of the few substances that you get addicted to and die from the withdrawals. Yeah. I mean, you could do heroin, you could do crack, you could do meth, you could do fentanyl. You probably be going before you get to any withdrawals, but you could do a whole litany of drugs or substances, and the withdrawals are going to hurt. It's going to feel terrible, but you're going to survive. Alcohol is not that way. You go cold turkey off of alcohol addiction, you're checking out of here because it's a central nervous system, suppressant. And when you take it away cold turkey, your central nervous system goes into shock. You have a seizure. You don't know what's going to happen. You got a 50-50 chance of surviving. So alcohol is a dangerous drug, dangerous substance. And we're starting to normalize drugs and alcohol in our culture. I think it's dangerous. I love that this guy just pointed it out. This looks like it's probably a bit old, but he's just saying, why is it so weird for me to say that I don't drink? In social circles, people look at me like I'm weird. And this looks like it's probably 10 years old just from the video quality, wouldn't you say? It looks like it's about 10, 15 years old. And he's saying even back then, when I tell people in public I don't drink it, they kind of look at me like I'm strange. It's poison. I don't drink it. If I say I don't drink water, everybody's okay with it. Like, yeah, water sucks. But we got a better water culture now. I think people are more aware, tuned to drinking water than they have been in decades past. My grandmother, for example, my grandmother, she's got to be 76 now, helped raise me. You know, I love her to death. She's the sweetest woman. You'd be hard-pressed to convince me that there's a week where she drinks more than a glass of water in a whole week. I don't think she drinks any water, which kind of debunks my theory in some ways. She drinks Diet Coke. Now, there's water in Diet Coke. People don't, if you ever been dehydrated, you had to go to, as an athlete, like, because I'm an athlete and athletes often get dehydrated and we lose fluid. And if you've ever been very dehydrated, like where you're cramping, or let's say you have like serious dehydration where you are throwing up, or you're getting physically ill, your body's starting to shut down, any good doctor is going to tell you that you could drink anything to help rehydrate you, right? It's not just Gatorade or water. You could drink ginger ale, you could drink Coke, you could whatever. There's so much water, and even more importantly in sodium, right? That you'll actually be able to rehydrate yourself with almost anything that you drink. Some things better than others. But there's enough water in Diet Coke, obviously, for you to survive to be 76, because my grandmother's 76. She doesn't drink water. I don't ever see her. I've never seen her drink bottled water. I've never seen her fill a glass up of water. I don't see, Grandma, if you're out there and you're watching the podcast and you drink water, I haven't seen it. It's happening in secret. I don't mean to defame you, but you and I both know you don't drink any water, okay? And I'm not saying, look, you're 76, you don't need to start drinking water now because your grandson says it. I love you to death. But I'm just saying, shit's crazy out here. I mean, going back to what Joe Rogan said in the beginning, I'm way off topic now, the water and the drinking, but to go back to what he said, the things that we just accept as the truth are wild. It's just wild. It's just wild, wild west out here. I don't even know. Do you have to drink water? I don't know. There are people who don't drink water at all. They drink more alcohol than they drink water, and they're living. How long will they live, and what the quality of life will be? That's another question. But here on the Please Call Me Crazy podcast, my general prescription would be, my general medical advice, not being a medical doctor, the less alcohol, the more water, the better. There. We'll end it that way. Next video. That's all the videos we got. Good. Today, what a way to end. Less alcohol, more water for you Please Call Me Crazy listeners. Hope you enjoyed the show. It's been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy. This is our news and reactions episode for the week. We switched it with our guest episode. Usually this happens on Wednesdays and the guest episodes happen on Fridays. Next week will probably be that way. Whether, one way or another, we're going to give you both episodes. If it has to change because a guest schedule fits better for us to have them on Wednesday, we'll do it on Wednesday. We'll switch them around. So hope you enjoyed the reactions episode. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, Real America's Voice, The Royce White Show, before War Room with Steve Bannon. I appreciate your viewership and listenership today and in the future. I hope you're enjoying the reaction show and the reaction videos. And leave comments, subscribe. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. I probably should have told you to do that in the beginning. Don't forget to go to tireget.com. If you need tires, you might as well buy them from us. You got to buy tires. You might as well buy them from us. If you use the promo code FPR, you're going to get 3% off your final purchase. And that's it for me. I appreciate your viewership and listenership again, like I said. And we'll see you tomorrow morning and next week. The fight continues. As always, Godspeed. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.